TSN's John Luke joins us now. We'll talk some Jets with him. Hey, but John, as an original Winnipegger, welcome back, by the way. When I say Labor Day Classic, does that stir up some emotions in you, being the CFL guy that you are?
100%. Yeah, absolutely, Rod. This is the best time of year for the CFL, isn't it? I mean, the second half of the season. Season starts with Labor Day Classic, green, blue and gold. Stoked for it.
What are your storylines through let's just say the first half of the season? We're actually well past the halfway point, but you know what I mean. What's been your stories?
For the Blue Bombers or the CFL?
Both.
We'll start with the Bombers. I think that it's that they've had to overcome a lot of adversity. This started in training camp. First of which is they lost some pretty key personnel, guys on all three phases of the game, like Janarian Grant, Jamarcus Hardrick. On defense, who did they lose on defense? I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but I mean they've had flux on defense. Or Demario Houston. Then they've gone through key injuries right out of the hopper, like Kenny Lawler, Dalton Schoen, now Adam Bighill, you name it. They've had a lot of stuff going on that's really tested their mettle because their salary cap got crunched, got squeezed because of the big name signings they made in the offseason that forced them to have to cut the budget elsewhere. And so this is a team that it took them a while to find their way, but the way that the defense has really stepped up in the last 4 or 5 games, you can see that, to go with that old cliche, that axiom of defense wins championships, if the Bombers go far this season, if they manage to emerge at the top of the pack in this crazy wide open Western division, a big part of it will be their defense. And so that's one of my storylines too, is just like the absolute wide open Wild West. There is no clear cut favorites in that division. It's really, there are 4 teams that could realistically have a chance of coming out and hosting the West Final. And so that's a lot of fun, especially with the games of their import that start this weekend coming and that take us right through. I think it'll be a sprint to the finish there. And in the East, it's really impressive to see Montreal picking up where they left off after their Grey Cup win. Superb record, looking really good, going to get better with Austin Mack coming back into the fold. And once Cody Fajardo is able to get healthy and return to the lineup, they'll probably look even better, considering that Donovan Alexander has been fantastic fill-in for him. So nice story in Ottawa as well with Drew Brown, the way that he sees the reins in his first season as the number 1 pivot there. And I love many of the nail-biting finishes, the comeback wins, the crazy finishes, whether by teams with game-winning drives or kickers with their failures or turnovers. It's like, I don't recall a season where there's been so much drama in the last 3 to 5 minutes of the game. We're used to the 3-minute warning, but it's just been escalated this season. And the other thing, too, that's a storyline for me is that there doesn't seem to be a real clear-cut favorite for MOP in either division. That there's no one dominant player, I think, that's coming out of the East or the West. And so that'll be fascinating to watch. But I think, Milligan, your guy in Saskatchewan, I think he has an excellent chance of being the West MOP. And unless somebody really steps up in the East, I think he could be the most outstanding player this season.
He's doing historic things and would be the first defensive player to win league MVP since Solomon Elamimian, and that's saying something. But you're right. It's had its foibles, command center blunders and that. But overall, the crowds are increasing. Usually happens in the second half. But in Winnipeg, they've been big all year. I got to ask you this. You weren't around, I don't think, for a large of the Bombers' problems in that 30-year drought. But to look at it now, it's hard to believe that they went from that to this. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you have to really give Mike O'Shea a huge amount of that credit. Even though he refuses to take it, he doesn't want to be acknowledged as the purveyor of the culture in Winnipeg. But it really started with Mike O'Shea. When he first was hired, it's been a decade now, he didn't have quite the personnel that was able to mesh with the the zeitgeist that he wanted to build in that dressing room. But now that you have long-standing veterans, even though some of them have moved on, but Zach Collaros was an instant, completely simpatico fit when he came in 5 years ago. But still have a lot of the core. Pat Neufeld, Stanley Bryant, Adam Bighill, Willie Jefferson. Guys, Nick Dembski. They seamlessly went from Andrew Harris to Brady Oliveira. Guys that fit into that culture. They are the ones that carry on not just the standard of play, but the cohesiveness and the atmosphere in that dressing room. And to be honest with you, Rod, I don't know if I've ever witnessed an atmosphere quite like that, where where the team is so their philosophy, the way of doing things, their culture is, and I mean, everybody talks about culture in every team and every sport at every level, but the Bombers really have something that is so solid going on. That's, once they got it in gear 5 years ago, going and winning back-to-back Grey Cups, it just kept going, and they just keep bringing in the guys that fit into that program, and that's actually the acronym that's one of their mottos, FIFO, which for public consumption stands for fit in or forfeit your opportunity, when in fact
okay.
It means fit in or FO. So I mean, we don't have to take a leap to figure that out, right? And that's the way they operate, and they do not deviate from that philosophy. And so it's no surprise that the Bombers they've been able to pull it together as we approach the midway point of the season and go into the crunch time. And to be honest with you, it's like, even if they squeak in third place in the division, I don't think the two teams ahead of them want to have anything to do with facing the Bombers in a playoff game going right through to the from semifinal or West final.
That's why when they were 0-4, I'm like, they'll be fine. They're not fine now, but they'll figure it out. And I'll be honest, I saw Mike O'Shea's induction speech at the Hall of Fame in Hamilton on the field at Tim Hortons. I was there. I think it was 2017. So it was a long time ago. And I was like, oh, the Riders are done. They're done. Because this guy spoke about work ethic. You've never earned anything in this world. Every single day you need to fight for it. And I was like, oh, man, that's it, man. If that's the way the Bombers are going, the Riders, and it's just, we've seen what's happened. I got to ask you this lastly on the Winnipeg Jets. How's it going to work? The handing of the baton from Rick Bowness to Scott Arniel. How much success are they going to have?
There's going to be continuity there for sure, Rod, simply because Scott Arniel worked so closely with Bones for 2 seasons as his associate coach. So the fundamental principles of that system, defense first system, puck pressure, that will remain intact. But so my understanding is that Scott Arniel has worked very closely with Davis Payne and Dean Chenoweth, his 2 new assistants, like burning the midnight oil from the time that he hired his 2 new assistants. And they're going to be embracing analytics much more so than the club has in years past, well, ever, for that matter. And so there will be some similarities succeeding Rick Bowness, but there will be some tweaks to it, which will be interesting to see, because fundamentally, this is the same team. At this moment in time, it's fundamentally the same team. That there are very few changes in personnel. They bought out Nate Schmidt. They let Brendan Dillon walk in free agency. So a couple of young guys are going to get more responsibilities, right, on the blue line, and there'll be a couple of spots up front. As it stands, there'll be a couple of spots up front that would be open to prospects that are in the system right now. So it's going to be interesting to watch training camp preseason to see if these young guys can really insert themselves into the equation, because Kevin Shoveldayoff early in the offseason said, he sent a signal to his young prospects that this is their opportunity. Their time is now to step up and step into roles that are available. So failing a transaction just before training camp, I don't see this lineup looking much different than it did from the end of the most recent season. And so how Scott Arniel is able to get the most out of this group and to take them a little bit further than they did last season, that'll be the interesting big picture element to watch with the Jets.
Going to be fun to watch. But for now and until then, football. John, thanks for the update. Fantastic as always. Enjoy the week.
Thanks for having me on, Rod. Always a pleasure.
TSN Winnipeg's John Liu.